Welcome back, everyone, to Double Take, an NFL podcast streaming everywhere you get podcasts and also on YouTube. I'm your host, David. I'm joined by my twin brother, Daniel. Daniel, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Cowboys game tomorrow. Gonna be there. So excited. And already hearing excuses already for why the Cowboys will beat Seattle tomorrow night. So
interesting.
We'll get into it.
Yeah, interesting. I can't wait for us to dive into that here in a second. But first, let's talk about what happened last week on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. We were actually together watching this game. It's the Cowboys defeating the Washington Commanders 45-10. Remember, we were on the podcast and saying, hey, this could be a trap game for Dallas. This could be a difficult game, especially against the Commanders because of just, past history. But Dak Prescott, 22 for 32, 331 yards, 4 touchdowns with no turnovers. Tony Pollard showed up a little bit, 13 carries, 79 yards with a running TD. And then probably what we freaked out, or at least I did, freaked out the most.
Yeah,
Deron Bland had his record-breaking pick six in the fourth quarter. So, Daniel, talk to me about this game. Was there anything that we could take away from this game that we said, oh man, this was super impressive? Or is this, just another game of, we just beat up on a really bad team?
I'm gonna go with the second one. I think we just beat up on a really bad team, which is what I think the encouraging thing about it is the fact that with every bad team that we face, we're leaving no doubt in those games. And the old Cowboys, and you could say the Arizona game was like that, where hey, there's a team you're supposed to beat, and you don't beat them. But ever since Arizona, or ever since the bye week, anyone who's come across our path, we've been able to beat them convincingly.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think it's getting closer to say that Arizona was an aberration. And there's like reasons why they didn't play well. I mean, obviously the injuries on the offensive line that game was huge, and a huge reason why we lost that game because no running game was happening. Protection for Dak was awful, and so. But what you want out of your football team is you want to beat the bad teams. You want to leave no doubt. And for me, I think the biggest thing was I thought it was going to be a trap game. I didn't think they were going to play as well as they did and just dominate from the beginning. And for me, it kind of gave me some hope in terms of like, hey, Philly struggled against this team. They struggled against the Commanders twice. And the Cowboys went in there and just beat the brakes off of them. So for me, that's the encouraging part. Now, a thing that kind of bugged me throughout the week was people trying to discredit Deron Bland and saying, oh, he's only getting these picks against bad quarterbacks. And I think the universal answer to that was like, well, and I think Acho from Speak said this same thing about Dak Prescott. If it was that easy, anybody would do it.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is no one else has done it. He set the record.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's the only thing that bothered me was people trying to discredit, Deron Bland and, whatever. I think the data and the stats can prove that Deron Bland is the real deal, whether he's playing good quarterbacks or bad quarterbacks. For the Pats, since he got drafted, he's like the lead in interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And so
it's 12 in 2 seasons.
Yeah, and he hasn't started every single game.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's the encouraging part is having Deron Bland there. I mean, the thing about it was that he was getting cooked, though. He was getting cooked all game. It seemed like every drive there was 2 or 3 catches on him. Some short, but some very intermediate, pretty long. And so for me, that was a concern that did arise for me. Is like, oh, he's not a complete shutdown corner.
Mm-hmm. But he has his moments.
And so for me, that was the encouraging thing about the game. I thought it would be closer than it was, but I'm glad it wasn't.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I'm not going to go as far as to say, well, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, are the Commanders a bad football team? Yeah, absolutely. Do the Cowboys beat them down? Yes, they do. I think you nailed it on the head. Where I think I'm still encouraged in that because in years past, well, even this season earlier against Arizona, like this Cowboys team has laid down and let those teams beat them. But since that 49ers game, or actually, I would say since the Chargers game, when they said, hey, we're going to hunker down and we're going to play football, they've dominated. I mean, they've played well, even against Philadelphia. Yeah, they lost by 5 points. There were a couple of plays that if it would have went a different way, you know, we're probably looking at a Cowboys team that's 10-2. Obviously, that's not the case. But when you look at this game and the fact that they're dominating bad football teams, which, like you said, the Eagles have struggled to do, um, I mean, you have to feel somewhat, I wouldn't say overly optimistic, but you have to think of like, oh, maybe there is something to this.
Mhm.
Um, it was just a good all-around win for the Cowboys. We took care of business. That's all that needs to be said about that. However, this week especially, I don't know, you've probably been keeping up with sports media as well as I have. This is the conversation that everyone's talking about, and I think that we need to offer our 2 cents in it. And I'm going to try and be as biased as possible, but I will say off the bat, of course, I'm a Dak Prescott fan. I'm a supporter. I believe in him. But Daniel, based on what you've seen so far from him this season, is Dak Prescott in the MVP conversation right now?
I think in the conversation, yes, in the conversation. Now, what I believe is that if Dak continues to play the way that he's playing, and he shows that he can beat Philly, Seattle, Buffalo, Miami, Detroit while playing well, I think he will be the MVP. I think he will be if he can do this against teams above 500. Because for that's the only knock for him not being the MVP right now. I think the fact that the loss to Arizona, everyone has a bad loss. Like Jalen Hurts lost to the Jets,
Yeah.
right? So everyone has that one game. But the other is San Francisco,
Mhm.
played horrendous there. I want to even say the Eagles is a game that you can knock him for because he wasn't the reason they lost the game, unless you want to
Yeah.
say, hey, he stepped out of bounds. Um, so for me, I think he just needs to beat teams above 500. If he
Yeah.
can do that, I think he will be the MVP. Now, right now, people are saying Jalen Hurts, and I'm coming around to the idea of being more comfortable with Jalen being the MVP. My only knock him is just he's looked really bad in like 3/4 of a game, and then for some reason he turns it on at the end of games and wins it out
Mhm.
and has these moments. I don't think anyone has more moments in terms of game-winning moments than Jalen Hurts this year.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I think he's the leader in MVP right now. But if Dak can beat teams above 500, continue his elite play, I think he will win the MVP.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you are. I took to social media after the Thanksgiving game and was like, I mean, you can't deny right now Dak Prescott is playing like he's the best quarterback in pro football.
Right.
But he hasn't beat a team over 500. And the only reason why that matters is because of the stretch that's coming up.
Right.
If he doesn't perform, and here's the thing, obviously with tougher teams, you may not get those gaudy numbers of like over
Right.
300 yards and stuff like that. But are you protecting the football and are you making the plays to put your team in position to win football games? And the reason why I say it like that is because the defense has to step up and do their part against these 500 above 500 teams.
Yep.
I mean,
True.
the defense against San Francisco did not play well. The
Nope.
defense against Philadelphia did not play well.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're looking at these upcoming games. You got Seattle, you got Philly, you got Buffalo, you got Miami, you got Detroit. If you're able to win, let's say you're able to win 4 out of those 5 games and play really well in all those 5 games. I mean, to me, here's what Dak has to do in order to win MVP. He has to do this 100%. He has to beat
Mhm.
Jalen Hurts in
Yep.
Dallas. You have to win that game to be considered as an MVP candidate, and you have to outplay him in that game. Now, a lot of people will say that he did outplay Jalen in Philadelphia, but it was those 1 or 2 plays that, stepping out of bounds or
Mhm.
getting stopped on 4th and goal, those kinds of things that Jalen Hurts makes those plays.
Right.
So even
Right.
though Dak may out, especially like you watch that Buffalo game, and because I don't think we're really going to talk about that game a lot, because I think I
Yeah.
meant to talk about it like in this moment right now,
Mhm.
is that when you look at that Buffalo game, like you said, for 3 quarters, Jalen Hurts looked pedestrian, if even that.
He looked awful.
He
He
looked
looked
bad.
awful.
I mean, 3 I think the numbers were like
He was like
3 for
3 of
12.
9 for, like,
Yeah.
18 yards and an interception.
Uh-huh. And a fumble, I think. I don't know if
Maybe.
the fumble.
Yeah, fumble. That's right. Yeah, they
So
did.
so so you have games to where he looks like that, but then he finishes the game with 5 total touchdowns, 3 in the air, 2 on the ground. And when you were talking about Jalen Hurts, scoring a lot of his rushing touchdowns with the tush push, I mean, in this game, the game winner was 15 yards.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah,
So
but again, there was another one where it was 1 yard.
true. Yeah.
And so, like, even his stats running the ball are not really good. Like, he has over 100 carries for less than 400 yards. So, like, not even averaging 4 yards a carry or 5 yards a carry, because most of them are coming from touch pushes. And
Right.
so, for me, that's the hang up.
Mhm.
That's the hang up for me, is the fact that and I don't wanna compare the 2,
Mhm.
and I might be over exaggerating, this might be hyperbolic, but, like, I think of Tim Tebow.
I
Obviously obviously
yeah.
obviously, Jalen is a way, way, way better player than Tim Tebow,
Right.
but in some of these games, it's been like that. You
Mhm.
play bad in the beginning of games, then when the crucial moments come, you show up and you show out.
Yeah.
And so for me, is that MVP? Well, if you do it for 4 straight weeks against good teams, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And so but that's my only knock on Jalen Hurts for MVP, is just the fact that I think his touchdown stats are over, like, they look more gaudy than they actually are. And it's like, hey, give those handoffs to the running back and have that be that's kind of what it is.
Well,
They're
please,
just
because
used.
I need Swift to. Well, one thing about Philadelphia that I absolutely cannot figure out. You have a guy like DeAndre Swift.
Mhm.
Why is he only touching the ball 5 to 6 times a game? Like, why aren't you using him more in this offense? Because
I
here's the
think
thing.
what
I think that Philadelphia would be more dominant. They
Mhm.
would be more impressive if they actually ran the ball with Swift as their primary running back, but they're not doing that. And we're talking about Brian Johnson, who's their offensive coordinator. Man, he's been wildly inconsistent this year.
he's I do not like him with the Eagles.
Right.
It just, for me, and I talked to Steve, like, me and Steven were texting back and forth during the Buffalo game, and I just kept telling him, I was like, I don't understand what he's do what is his name? Brian Johnson? Bill Johnson?
Brian Johnson.
Brian Johnson. I was like, I don't understand for the life of me what he's doing with Jalen Hurts.
Mhm.
Like, the play calling up until late in games has been awful and doesn't make any sense. And so, but, you talk about DeAndre, he's 4th in the league in rushing.
Yeah.
Um,
I think he'd be
I
number
think,
1 if he got the ball more.
yeah, I think what's yeah, because, like, I don't there's only one game where he's gotten above 20 carries,
Mhm.
and there's maybe like two about
How
But
many
let's
carries
say
did he have against Buffalo?
14. He had 14 for 80.
Mhm.
Uh, didn't score, but I think what they like to do, and I don't know this for a fact.
Mhm.
Probably when we have Steven on next week, then we can discuss it more. But I think
Which
what they love
Steven are
to
you
do.
talking about? Are you talking about
Ste-
Savage?
no, 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 no. That's
So different
Savage.
Steve.
I'm talking about
Okay.
Steven.
Okay. Okay.
Um, but they love to use DeAndre Swift late in games.
Mhm.
That's what I saw in Buffalo. Like, hey, when we're nearing the end of the game, we're gonna get in the ball however we can.
Yeah.
And so I can understand why if they gave him the ball more, would they be more dominant? Probably, yeah. But would he be gassed at the end of games when they need him the most? That's probably what I would argue is they're saving him for late game situations. Because I'll tell you, in the fourth quarter against Buffalo and overtime, he was explosive.
Yeah, he
Don't
was.
know if you get that same explosion if he's doing that at the beginning of the game versus towards the tail end. But that's just me. That's just my opinion on it.
Yeah,
But
the way that I
there's
the way
one.
that I view it is that if you're
Yeah.
giving him the ball early in the game and you're having the
Yeah.
offense flow through him, I don't
Mhm.
think you're in that situation to where you require for him to be as dominant in the fourth quarter because you're coasting, you're cruising. You can lean on Jalen Hurts. You can even rely on Gainwell at that point in the game because now
Mhm.
their defense is gassed. Their defense is um, ran roughshod, and so you have an opportunity to just press on the gas with somebody else. But I
Yeah.
think that the reason why they're finding themselves in late starts is because they're not utilizing Swift more. I mean, he should have 20 carries, at
Mhm.
least 20. Give him 6 more touches in the first half. See what happens.
Yeah.
But we kind of alluded to it, and you kind of, I think, said this before we even hit record. Um, the Cowboys, they have a tough 5-game stretch coming up. Like we said,
Mhm.
Seattle, Philadelphia, Buffalo, Miami, and Detroit. What record do you think that the Cowboys are going to finish this 5-game stretch with?
I think for me, what's probably realistic is 4-1. They'll win 4 out of the 5. Um, I do believe they'll beat Seattle tomorrow. I do think they'll beat Philly. I think they'll beat Buffalo. Miami is kind of one I'm going back and forth on.
Mhm.
Um, but for me, I haven't seen the same Miami that we saw in the beginning of the year.
Right.
Um, and then obviously with Detroit, I mean they just
Right
got
now,
they just got they just got carved up by Jordan Love and the Packers. You don't think Dak can carve them up? And I think what it takes is this is what I believe right now about Dak Prescott and this offense. It's going to take a 49ers like defense to stop Dallas
mm,
offensively. That's what it's going to take right now. And
that's high
Detroit,
praise.
they started that way. Detroit did,
Mhm.
but over the last couple of weeks, they've let Baltimore hang points on them. Who else did they let? The Chargers, I think, right? Let the Chargers hang
I
some
mean, the
points on
Chargers,
them.
they had, like, 38 points, yeah.
And then, look at what Green Bay did to them. So their defense isn't where it was at the beginning of the year, where we were giving them the type of, hey, this is a top 10 defense.
Mhm.
And so for me, I think Dak can play well enough to where he can get you 30. I believe he can get you 30. And that's crazy because at the beginning of the year, I was like, man, I don't see us scoring more than 24 points in a game, maybe not even 20.
Yeah.
But how the Cowboys have been playing has been really, really great. And if you want to talk about, hey, the defenses that they played against the Jets defense. Look what Dak did. He was efficient. It
Mhm.
wasn't gaudy, but it was efficient. And so I think Dak playing good defense can be efficient,
Yeah.
even if he's not throwing the ball all the way down the field. And so for me, that's why I think we'll go 4-1 in this 5-game stretch. Where the loss, I believe, where it could come from is probably Miami, maybe.
Mm.
But I'm using the beginning of the year Miami to dictate what I'm
Yeah.
believing now because the Raiders were able to keep in pace with them, and so that's kind of where I'm staking. Hey, they'll have a shot for sure. That's what I believe. They'll have a shot to be 5-0, but I believe it'll be 4-1. I think they'll drop one.
Yeah. I think it is also going to be 4-1. I also see honestly though, I don't see us losing to Miami. I see us losing possibly to Buffalo. Josh Allen has the tendency to show up when you don't expect him to. And he played well against Philly.
Mm-hmm.
Played well against Philly. And I think I just don't trust our defense as much. The thing with Miami, the reason why I feel good about Miami is because Miami's a team that if they get hit in the mouth, they don't know what to do.
True. You get them off balance, you make them comfortable. They sputter, and they don't know how to respond to that.
And
I
so
agree.
that's what I think is going to happen in Miami. I think with Buffalo, we're playing in Buffalo. We're playing in the cold temperatures. I don't know how this team's going to do, especially since they play in AT&T Stadium. So I really don't know what's going to happen there. I mean, obviously they go to Philadelphia in December, and so I mean, but we just don't know what Buffalo is going to be like, and so I think that's going to play a factor. I will say though, with the way that Jalen Hurts is playing football, I don't think that the Cowboys beating Philadelphia is a sure thing either. I mean, I get what you're talking about, it's going to take a 49ers like defense to stop Dak Prescott in this offense. But the Cowboys defense hasn't shown that they could stop Jalen Hurts either. And Jalen Hurts has proven that when the game comes down to the final seconds in that final possession, he's scoring a touchdown or putting his field goal kicker, Elliott, who's a beast. I mean, a 59-yarder in the rain is insane, but he has shown that he can put teams that he can carry the team on his back and win football games. Again, I love Dak. I haven't seen him do that this season other than the Chargers game. I won't go as far as Emmanuel Acho on Speak saying that Cooper Rush could have won all these games. I'm not going to say that, but Jalen Hurts has proven that he can win games in the fourth quarter. I need to see Dak do that before I can be like, oh yeah, that's an automatic victory.
Well, none of these, I don't believe in all of these games are automatic, and especially Philly. The reason why I'm picking them against Philly is because I believe both teams are good enough to where there's going to be a split in the series. So it just makes sense for me to go in that direction. But for me, I'm not scared of Buffalo, personally. And the reason why I'm not scared is because in the same week, Jalen Hurts proved me wrong, and Josh Allen proved me right. Jalen Hurts had his moment to win the game, and he won it, and continue to prove to me that, hey, I should put more stock into his MVP conversation. But Josh Allen proved me right, and when you get late in games and you give him the opportunity to take off, he will not do it. He is incapable of winning in overtime and late game situations. He proves that late interception to get Philly back into the game.
Yeah.
And also missing Gabe Davis wide open in the end zone. It's just who Josh Allen is. That's just who he is. And the thing that I saw clips of Michael Irvin giving him praise. This is why I love Michael to death. I love Michael Irvin because of stupid butthole takes like that. He said, oh, Josh Allen, he played amazing. He was a superhero. He showed up when he needed to. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He played great until he needed to be great. That's who Josh Allen is. He plays great. That's why, for me, Jalen has entered the conversation for me for MVP, and he's the leader right now. Because, yes, you can have all the statistics in the world. You can play great for 3.5 quarters. But what are you going to do when the moment comes and you have to be elite and amazing all-time great.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be that guy? Jalen has proved multiple times he's that guy.
Yeah.
Josh Allen gave that game away twice.
Mm-hmm.
And so, sorry to get on a rant about Michael Irvin, but that every time he said like Josh Allen did everything he was supposed to do to win the game, no, he didn't, or he would have won it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me, I believe Philly's going to be a tough game. That one's no guarantee, but I think we'll beat Buffalo just because that's who Josh Allen is.
Mm.
That's who he is. If we get into a close game, which I don't think it'll be close. I don't think it'll be. I think it'll be maybe Cowboys 35, Buffalo 24.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think it's going to be. Because I don't know. Maybe I'm a prisoner of what Dak has done in the past couple weeks. But if you're not
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco's defense, I don't know what you can do with Dak Prescott. Because even you talk about what Philly was able to do in stopping Jalen. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
Dak played out of his mind. And he plays out of his mind against Philly. And so
Yeah.
I for right now, Dak has earned my trust that he's going to play well
Mm-hmm.
against teams that are not San Francisco right now.
So the only thing I will say to that, and people might freak out that I'm actually saying this, but I think what you said for Josh Allen is what a lot of people say about Dak Prescott. That
Fair.
he can be great for 3 quarters, for 4 quarters, for most of the game, but when it matters most, Dak doesn't make the plays that he needs to. I think what we're going to learn in this stretch for the next 5 weeks is Dak Prescott that kind of quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think he's finally and Aaron Rodgers made comments yesterday at the time of this recording. He made comments yesterday about how Dak Prescott is one of his favorite quarterbacks to watch right now because of the command that he has of the offense, the fact that he's changing protection at the line. And he doesn't see a lot of quarterbacks doing that Dak is at a different level when it comes to cadence, and he's running it beautifully and this and this and that. So if Dak Prescott is completely in the zone, this is the offense that best suits him, and it seems like it is. If he finally has full command of the offense, this is the opportunity for you in a 5-game stretch, barring any major injuries, to where Dak, prove it.
Mm-hmm. This
Prove
is the
it.
time.
This is
time
it.
to prove it.
This is it for Dak Prescott. And so I'm excited to see where this goes and where we're taken to. But let's go ahead and move on to some quick takes before we go to pick 'em this week. So let's talk about the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos winner of 5 in a row, and some impressive wins because I think they beat Kansas City, they beat Buffalo.
So
Who
it'd be
else have?
Kansas City, Buffalo, the Vikings, Cleveland. That's who they beat.
Yeah, that's who they've beaten so far on this stretch and on this run. So now they are 6
Also the
and
Packers.
5, and they also beat the Packers as well. But Daniel, are they a team that you can see making the playoffs this season?
I do not see that happening. I don't think they can win their division. And based on the standings right now, or the playoff picture, I should say, you look at the teams that are still in the hunt. You got the Steelers, the Browns, and the Colts. Could they possibly get into one of those spots? Maybe. I think Cleveland has a better shot of not making the postseason. I do give that to them. I just think, and I haven't watched enough Denver games to be conclusive on this, but for me, it seems like their offense isn't particularly potent.
Mm-hmm.
But they score enough to win games. I think if their defense can keep
is
them
playing
in it,
lights out. Yeah.
I think if their defense can keep them in it, they have a shot.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at the Colts, and they're able to put up points, and they're able to stay in games. Cleveland, I think if there's a spot that they can go for, it would be Cleveland's spot, I
Mhm.
think. But am I gonna bet on that? No. I think they're heading in the right direction though. Um, they were looking like dead in the water, and like, man, is Sean Payton really the coach for this team?
Yeah.
And now they're 6-5. I think for them it's already a win this season that they are able to at least be competitive. But I look at their schedule. They have Houston this week.
That's gonna be a
That's gonna
hard
be
game
tough.
for them. Yeah.
The Chargers, that's gonna be a test for that defense. They got Detroit right after that. They got New England and then the Chargers again. So it's gonna be tough for them and then for the rest of the year. I think the only gimme game that they have is pretty much uh, New England. But other than that, I think it's going to be difficult. Justin Herbert, that offense is going to be hard to stop.
Are you talking about the same Chargers team that only scored 10 points against Baltimore and looked
I mean, it's
absolutely
Baltimore.
horrendous? I mean, it is Baltimore,
Baltimore.
but at the same time, like there hasn't been a better defense in the NFL in
Right.
this stretch. Like, I mean, Denver's been a top 5 defense as well.
Mhm.
And Kellen Moore, I'm 100%. I'm trying not to be haha, I told you to everybody who said that Kellen Moore should have stayed in Dallas and that Dallas
We were going to
we were
miss
gonna
it.
miss him and all this kinds of stuff. Like, man, that Chargers team is just not good. And so
Yeah.
I could see Denver winning both of those games
Okay. Now,
in Los Angeles and
again,
in
I don't
Denver.
I don't watch enough Denver
Right.
games to know, hey, how does that offense operate? Because I think that's my only question
Mhm.
about Denver is their offense.
Their offense could be better, but what Russell Wilson has shown in the last and this stretch is Sean Payton is now allowing him to get outside the pocket, go off script, and make plays with his arms and with his legs. And he's done that the last 3 to 4 games. And so, if that continues to be the trend, if you see Russell Wilson be a little bit more like the Russell Wilson of old in Seattle, I think that Denver really does have a shot in making the playoffs because I think you're looking at Cleveland. I don't know if they're going to continue to win games as good as that
Yeah.
defense is. Um, Indianapolis, I don't know
They're
if they stay
spotty.
in the 7th seed. They are
No,
spotty. So
they're
I
spotty. They have a
so
great game and then they have a stinker right after that.
so could I see Denver sneak in and claim that 7th spot to squeak into the playoffs? Like I do, even with the schedule, because I see them beating the Raiders. I see them beating the Chargers twice, and I see them, like you said, um, beating New England. So you have 4 wins right there. You finish the season 10-6 or 10-7.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's a pretty good record. I think you're in a good situation. Now, like
Mm.
you said, Houston's the game that I'm looking at, and I'm like, that's a toss up. That really is a toss up
Yeah.
because you also got to worry about Houston as well claiming a spot as well.
Because right
So,
now they're the 8th seed, Broncos are the 9th seed.
mhm. So, I mean, do you see Indianapolis falling out? Do you see Cleveland falling out? And if you
I think
do,
yeah,
does Houston
yeah,
and Denver jump up and claim those two, that 6th and 7th seed? And depending on, I think it's going to, this game is important even for seeding for both teams because
yep,
whoever wins this game is going to have the 6th seed, in my opinion.
yeah, I'm with you.
But continue to talk about playoff teams or possible playoff teams, like we talked about. Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills, after losing to Philly, are now 6-6. Daniel, are they a team that you think is gonna is? I mean, the way that we've been talking about it sounds like we're saying Buffalo's going to miss the playoffs.
I mean, it certainly seems that way. Um, right now they're the 10 seed, and if
Mm-hmm.
you just look at the upcoming schedule that Buffalo has, they got to play the Cowboys. That's definitely one on our radar. But
They're
they have the
playing
bye
Kansas.
week this
Yeah,
week.
they do have a bye week this week.
They play Kansas City,
Mm-hmm.
Dallas, the Chargers, New England, and Miami. Now, if you want to say, hey, they'll beat the Chargers, they'll beat New England, that's probably right. They did I'm if I'm not mistaken, they blew out Miami the first time,
Yeah, I think it was.
48-20.
Yeah,
And so can they do it again? So that would be what, 3 wins of their last 5. Do I think they beat Kansas City? I don't think so. I don't think they'll beat Dallas. So you look at their record right now, they're what, 6-6? So you get
9-8.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 more wins, 9-8. Is that enough to get into the postseason? I think it really all depends how it's going to line up, but that's what I think they're going to finish to end the year. For me, it's just tough because unless we go through every schedule of the remaining seeds, meaning the Steelers, Browns, Colts, Texans, Broncos, if we go through all that, could we probably predict where it is?
Yeah,
Probably, but I don't. I really don't want to do that. I don't think we don't have time for that.
but we got time.
I guess we do.
Listen,
Um,
I'm pulling. Okay, so I have the Steelers schedule pulled
okay,
up. Okay,
okay.
so
You go over
again,
that.
they're seven and
I'll
four
pull
right
up.
now.
Yeah.
Then you pull up Cleveland. So they got Arizona, New England, the Colts, Cincinnati, Seattle, and Baltimore. This is Pittsburgh's schedule. So I'm gonna say that they're gonna beat Arizona. So they go to 8-4. They're gonna beat New England. They go 9-4. And then all you're saying is that they have to win what, 2 more games?
I would say
They
maybe
got the
one game.
they got the
Maybe one more
Colts,
game.
they got Cincinnati, Seattle, and Baltimore. I don't think they're beating Seattle. I don't think they're beating Baltimore. So those are 2 losses. I
Mhm.
do see them possibly beating the Colts, and I'd see them beating Cincinnati. So they could have 2 more wins on their schedule. So they could finish the year at 11-6. And they could.
Yeah, they could.
So I think
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's definitely going going to the playoffs. And then
Yeah,
you
I look at
have
the I look at the Browns. They got to play the Rams, Jacksonville, Chicago, Houston, New York, and Cincinnati.
Mhm.
So not a bad schedule.
Mhm.
And the record is right now what, 6-5.
Yeah. No, no,
So
no.
I think
They're Cleveland schedule, I think they're like 8-4,
8-4.
I
Let me
think.
let me look. They're 7-4. They're 7-4.
Yeah, 7-4. Yeah.
So I think they'll lose to the Rams. So I think 8-5. Jacksonville, they'll lose that 8-6. Chicago, 8-7. Houston, 8-8. Or I missed a number. Let's see, 8. Well, 7-4. So it'll be 7-5, 7-6, 7-7, 7-8. They play New York right after that. I'll say they win that one. So 8-8, and then the last game against Cincinnati, I'll give it to them. So they'll go what, 9-8.
Yeah, and I really quick went through Houston's schedule. I have been finishing 11-6. So Buffalo, I mean, they essentially can only lose one more game on their schedule.
Yeah, they have to virtually win out.
Mhm. To make it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think it's going to be tough for them. I think Kansas City and Dallas will get them,
Mhm.
and if they give another one up, then that'll be their chances there. But if they can steal one against Kansas City or Dallas, that
Mhm.
would help them a whole lot. That's what they
Yeah.
would need to do.
Yeah. Doesn't seem like very hopeful for Buffalo.
No, no.
Now we're gonna move on to Monday Night Football. The Chicago Bears squeaked out a victory over the Minnesota Vikings. Joshua Dobbs, who everybody loved, we loved as well here on the podcast,
Came
threw
back to
4
earth.
picks, 4 interceptions, and even Justin Fields made 2 big throws late, but he also had 2 straight fumbles in the fourth quarter. Daniel, we've talked about Justin Fields before. You have called him a top 10 running back. But you've also called into question just the kind of organization that's around him in
Yep.
Chicago. It looks like Chicago will probably have the first overall pick because of how bad Carolina is, especially after firing Frank Wright.
Mm-hmm.
With that first overall pick, you have Caleb Williams coming out of USC. If you're Chicago, do you take Caleb Williams and get rid of Justin Fields?
For me, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. And and maybe it's just me trying to protect Caleb Williams, but it would be a disaster for him if he went to Chicago in the state that they're in right now. Not knowing who your head coach is going to be, because I believe they're going to fire their head coach at the end of the year.
Mm.
Also, the offensive line continues to be horrendous. The only weapon you have on offense is what? DJ Moore. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, and barely any running game to show for it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe what they should do is possibly trade that pick again.
Mm. Wow.
Trade it. Get rid of it. Get more. So you can build a team around Justin.
Yeah.
Now, what's probably because I've been hearing about where players would go, and it looks like Chicago get the first overall pick, Arizona would get the second, and then
Mm-hmm.
New England the third overall pick. Just where we sit right now,
Mm-hmm.
what Arizona needs is not a quarterback. They have Kyler, and I believe what Justin Fields needs is a receiver.
Mm-hmm. Another one.
Another one, another guy, and a guy who can play anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I believe with the first overall pick, they should take Marvin Harrison Jr. That's what I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Because if Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't going to be gone by pick 4, I would say trade the first overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
But because I believe that you need to get a wide receiver, someone to help Justin Fields, you need to go get him. And then trade the 4th overall pick to get more picks, either later in the first round, in the second round, just to acquire more talent to put around maybe an offensive line, a better defense. You have your options there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't believe drafting Caleb Williams is going to fix your issues. It's just not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who the quarterback is. If you don't have an offensive line, you don't have weapons, you don't have a good coach, you don't have a great defense, it's going to be the same issues. It's going to be the same issues.
Yeah.
And so I believe that's the best action for Chicago is to stick with Justin, build the team around him, build a scheme around him, and give it a shot, a real shot. Not we drafted him, we expect him to do this and this. And no, build the team around him. Give him an actual chance to be your franchise. That's what I think they should do.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to just watch First Take, to watch Speak, to watch Undisputed, of how they view quarterback success. Because one of the things I feel like I'm disagreeing with Joy Taylor more and more and more as the weeks go on, because she likes to constantly say that Justin Fields is 7-26 or 7-27 as a starter, but he doesn't have a team. He has nothing. He has incompetent coaches.
Wins are a team stat, not a QB stat. Is what everyone else is saying.
Yeah. And I mean, and they're talking about, we have to see something from you. You can't see anything if you're not being developed.
Yeah.
There's no development happening with Justin Fields. There's no one there to teach him, to mentor him, to coach him to be better. And when you're playing with such a bad team, you're more susceptible to developing bad habits, to having your game shoved down.
Yeah.
And it stunts your growth. And that's what to me, that's what's happening in Chicago.
Mhm.
And so, like you said, if the coaches change and you get someone in there who really knows what they're doing, I think Justin Fields hasn't yet been given an opportunity to really develop and for us to really see what he can do. I mean, we look at Jalen Hurts, and I'm not, again, this is not a comparison of Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields because obviously Jalen Hurts is heads and shoulders above Justin Fields. But Jalen Hurts has the best offensive line of football,
Mhm.
an amazing wide receiver duo, an average an average defense who shows up when they need to.
Yeah.
I don't want to say hate. I need to stop saying hate. I strongly dislike Nick Sirianni, but he's coaching them pretty well.
Yeah, and I think Jalen has been developed. I think
Yeah,
they
and he's been
he
developed.
not only have they invested in him and with good coaching around him, but he's also
And good players and good
himself.
teammates and all that. Yeah, he's
And
developed
and
himself as
he's
a
and
player.
he's gotten better every year that he's gotten into the league. And
Mhm.
I believe that coming into the league, the issue of him throwing the football was a major concern.
Yeah.
It's similar to the same concerns that people have about Justin Fields right now. Can he be accurate
Mhm.
enough?
Yeah.
I think in and maybe that's just part of the issue too is like, is Justin going and getting developed just on his mechanics? Is he seeing
Mhm.
someone that can help
Yeah.
him be more accurate? Because
Yeah.
we've seen Lamar and Jalen do it, and they've gotten better in
Yeah.
the first couple of years of their career. I've yet to see
Mhm.
Justin Fields jump up at any in that
Mhm.
regard. And so,
Yeah.
I think if you put the right system, hit him in the right system, get him with the great coach that can help develop him, put the team around him, and then he still is not playing well, then you can be like, okay, he's not that guy.
Mhm.
But let's put a team around him first, see if he can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. We'll see what Chicago does. My thing is that I wouldn't you're gonna put Caleb Williams in a bad situation if you put him on this team and you have no idea what you're doing.
Mhm. Agreed.
So I mean, just
Agreed.
stick with Justin Field. I mean, I don't know. I'm 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 not as sold on Caleb Williams as everyone else is. To me, he plays great football until he plays against the top college football teams. Then he
Yeah.
turns the ball over, doesn't play well, and I think everyone's just glossing over that because he throws an amazing ball. He throws a really good ball, but I think that him going to Chicago, I mean, I don't. It might be a little bit better. You might win 2 or 3 more games, but like you said, Chicago needs a team.
Yeah.
They need a
They need
team
a team.
first.
They need that more than anything right now, more than getting another quarterback with no team behind him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and let's move on to our final segment, pick 'em, as we are now heading into week 13. How did we do last week? I went 13-2. Daniel went 11-4. So now I'm up by 2 games in pick 'em. But we still got a lot of football left to go. But let's go ahead and let's dive into this. And Daniel, I want you to talk to me about this game, Seattle versus Dallas. You were saying earlier that people were going to make excuses or were already making excuses for this game. What have you heard so far?
I've heard similar to what we've heard all year. Seattle started really great, so people were like, "Hey, they're a contender."
Mm-hmm.
They struggled the past couple of weeks. So the inclination or what I'm feeling is that if Dallas beats Seattle, they'll be like, "Oh well, they're not good anymore."
Mm-hmm.
So you still haven't beat a good team yet. And so, you know, toss up there, but they have a winning record. The debate was, hey, can you beat good teams? Can you beat teams above 500?
Mm-hmm.
They're above 500. So if we
Yeah.
beat them, we beat a team above 500.
Yeah.
Um, but that's just what I'm here. I already know excuses that people are gonna make. I already
Mm-hmm.
know what it is.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, Dallas, you gotta take care of business tomorrow night. You just have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. You do. So obviously you're choosing Dallas to win this game.
Yeah. I am.
All right. So do I. Next game, Chargers versus New England. I'm going to go with Chargers. These are two really bad football teams.
Yeah.
I think for New England, they don't have any players, and I think for Chargers, they don't have any coaches. But I'm going to go with the Chargers. I think that New England's just so bad.
Yeah, they're
Probably one of
terrible.
these days, we're going to have to ask the question: should Bill Belichick be fired or let go
Yeah.
or mutually
Mhm.
parted ways with New England? Just because, man, this is awful. This is bad.
This is
I'm
bad.
going with
Yeah.
Chargers.
Yeah. I'm going with Chargers as well.
Then we have Detroit versus New Orleans. Again, like I said last week, New Orleans is just not the team that I thought they were. Even Detroit coming off of that loss to Green Bay, it's a division rival. It happens.
Mhm.
Obviously they've gone down and they're now the fourth team in the NFC behind Dallas now. So now I'm with you and Dad on that. But I think Detroit wins this game and they win it pretty convincingly.
I agree.
All right, next game, Atlanta versus the Jets. Going to Atlanta. Atlanta is not the most consistent team, but the Jets are a mess. I don't
Yeah.
see them doing anything.
They're a mess, and I right now Atlanta has the fuel to continue to play well because hey, they're right now they're in the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe the key to their success is to get the ball to Bijan Robinson. That is
Mm-hmm.
their success. That's how they can continue to go on this
Mm-hmm.
run. So I think they'll continue that and win.
Yeah. Next game we have is Pittsburgh versus Arizona. I'm going Pittsburgh. I like Kyler Murray, but they're missing weapons. They're missing key things.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's defense is just really, really good. I trust that more than their offense.
Yeah.
So I'm going with Pittsburgh.
Again, I believe they need to get the ball to Najee, let him
Mm-hmm.
run it, let him carry it. Kenny Pickett, don't turn the ball over. And I think your defense will take care of the rest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Next game is Indianapolis versus Tennessee. I'm going Colts. I just like what they're doing. I like Gardner Minshew.
Mhm.
But honestly, this game is a toss up. It could go either way.
Yeah, it really can go either way. It's just with Tennessee, Will Levis hasn't been awful, but he hasn't been the guy that he was his first game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see him throwing for like very minimal yards, couple touchdowns, but nothing too flashy enough to win this game for Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agree. Next, not even going to talk about it. Miami, Washington.
Yeah,
Miami's winning.
yeah, for sure.
Next game, though, Denver versus Houston. We actually disagree on this one. You
Mhm.
have Houston. I have Denver in this game.
Yeah, yeah. I was tempted to go Denver as well, but I think the poise of CJ Stroud when, he's rolling out of the pocket, when the plays are breaking down, he has this calmness about him, this command of the field to where he doesn't hesitate. He doesn't get nervous, he doesn't fear from the moment. And so I believe that he'll make enough plays to win this game. And I think
Mm.
Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, like he has a wavelength with these guys and they play well for them and they can get deep. And so I think they'll pull it out.
Yeah, I'm thinking about switching it, but I probably won't. I just like Denver in this game. I think that their defense is playing lights out. I think they have the opportunity. 16 turnovers in this 5-game stretch.
Mhm.
Like, insane, ridiculous. You're playing CJ Stroud, who's a rookie quarterback. He's already had one game where he's thrown multiple interceptions. I
Mhm.
think that he has another one left in him. And I think this is the week where it happens and it gets done. Even though their offense isn't as explosive, passing the ball, running the ball, Denver's really effective. Russell Wilson has shown more that he's capable of making the big plays in the moments that he needs to. And so I'm going to roll with that over CJ Stroud, even though I think that this is going to be a heck of a game.
Mm.
Next game, not even worth talking about. Tampa Bay, they're going to beat Carolina. Like we said, Carolina's a mess. Frank Wright being fired. I don't know how I feel about that.
No,
I
it's
mean,
awful. Travesty. The
I mean,
travesty.
I mean, he wasn't getting the job done, but could you at least wait to the end of the year just to see? Just
I
let him know
mean,
he's on the hot
they
seat?
stripped the cover bare and left him with nothing.
Yeah.
You know, you trade away DJ Moore, you trade away Christian McCaffrey the year before that. You trade
Mhm.
defensive players out, then just give up everything. You know, you take Bryce Young when he wanted CJ Stroud, and so he doesn't fit in whatever system that he thinks that he's running. And
Yeah.
so there's a whole lot of things that Carolina is just a dysfunctional organization, and they're
Mhm.
losers, and they're going to continue to be losers because they have an owner who doesn't know anything and
Mm.
fires coaches left and right in in the short span of however long he's owned the team.
Yeah.
And so that's just a terrible situation. I feel bad for Bryce Young as well because I think he's going to be stuck there too.
Yeah, unfortunately. Next game, Cleveland versus the Rams.
You know, I'm going to go with the Rams because I think Cleveland offensively is just
Yeah.
it's I don't think it's good enough. It's definitely not good enough. You know, the Rams offense is nothing to really, shout out to the rooftops as well. I mean,
Mhm.
they struggle to score points, I believe, in a couple of their games, and so but I trust them. I trust Sean McVay more than DTR right now.
Yeah. 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 I'm going to go with them too. Now, what a lot of people are going to say, and I mean, we'll say, is the biggest game of the week.
Yep.
San Francisco versus Philly in Philadelphia. I'm going with Philly. I think that Philly has the greatest duo of all time. I feel like you know what I'm going to say. It's Philly and
On the
those refs. Together, they're unstoppable, everybody. I mean, this is where I'm going to get on my rant. I mean, at times, it's better to be lucky than to be good. And for 4 straight weeks, Philadelphia has been lucky more than they've been good. The refs consistently miss call after call after call. Again, this is not a knock on Jalen Hurts because Jalen Hurts makes the plays that he needs to. But the refs help him out to put him in those situations. He just gets the job done. It is what it is. So I think Philly, they're at home. They got the refs in their back pocket. They can't lose. They can't lose this game. They're not going to lose this game. The NFL won't let them lose this game. And here's the thing, like I really feel that. For like I really believe that. Because it's happened too many times now to be a coincidence of missed pass interference calls, missed holding calls. Like the fact that Philadelphia is beating down teams and the penalty ratio, like I think it's like 1-10. Like it's insane. It's nuts. And I just don't think that it's gonna stop anytime soon. They get away with everything. And I think they're gonna continue to get away with everything. And this is why I don't give the 49ers a chance.
Hmm. you know, I can't disagree with anything that you just said. I really can't. But the reason why I'm picking San Francisco is because yes, Eagles get some favorable calls, and Jalen comes alive in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But ever since the bye week, San Francisco coming out of the bye week, they've been great on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
Been great. And I think that that's what Philly has not faced is a defense like San Francisco. I don't know if they can have the same kind of success against the 49ers defense.
Mm.
And what we've noticed about the Eagles defense, their defense, especially their secondary, is suspect.
Yeah.
And so I believe with addition to Christian McCaffrey, being
Mm-hmm.
able to get the ball to George Kittle, getting Debo in the game, Brandon Ayuk, Jennings, whoever, I believe San Francisco will jump out to an early enough lead and be able to keep it. That's what you got to do against this team. You got to pour it on them quickly to where in the fourth quarter when Jalen decides to turn it on, it's going to be too little, too late.
Yeah.
So that's how I believe San Francisco can win the game. Now, am I going to be shocked if Philly wins the game? No, I'm not. I'm not going to be shocked. This is not a format. There's not a done deal. San Francisco will win the game. But this is going to be an actual test for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
It's the game that we should have gotten last year. And that's why, for me, I think this will be the game of the year. Hopefully. I really hope it is. I hope it's not a blowout.
Yeah.
But, I think, when Steven comes on the show next week, we'll definitely talk about this game in length.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for it. This is going to be great. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. In all serious, though, I mean, I'm kind of joking about the refs, but I obviously I think that is a concern that the NFL needs to look into. But really, why I think that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win this game is because who do I trust more, Jalen or Brock Purdy?
Yeah.
And Jalen's just shown too much this season that he can overcome the impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, he can.
And if you're going to tell me that it's going to come down to, hey, you give each quarterback a chance to win the game, who do you trust more to win it? I'm definitely going to take Jalen.
I think you bring up a really good point, though, of San Francisco defense. And here's what needs to be known. And LaShawn McCoy will hate this because it was said on Speak, but I feel this 100%. If the 49ers beat the Philadelphia Eagles, the Niners are the best team in football. Because, yes, they had 3 games to where they struggled and they were hurt and they were injured and this and this and that.
Yep.
But when they're healthy, when they're all on the field, they're the best team in football. I mean, you have to say that if they beat the Eagles.
Yeah.
But if the Eagles win this game, there's no doubt that the Eagles are the best team in football.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of just been the only question about Philly. Obviously beating Kansas City, but there was controversy with that win.
Yeah.
They beat Buffalo, but there was a controversy in that win. Or not even controversy. Well, maybe a little bit of controversy, but there was like, hey, if Josh Allen completes that pass, that's game over. And so there's been those questions. Same thing against Dallas. Like, yeah, you beat Dallas, but if Dak doesn't step out of bounds, they go in, they tie that game.
Or if they get one of the 3 fumbles that you had.
Right. And so I think for this game, it's really going to either solidify Philly, or I don't want to say exposed because I don't think they're in a position to be exposed.
Well, I think,
but there'll still be questions about Philly.
Yeah, well, I will say that their luck has run out. I think that's what people will say. Because everyone, there's nothing to expose because Philly is out there in the open. Philly has shown that their defense is susceptible. Their offense has shown that they're inconsistent. The only thing that is for sure, is that Jalen Hurts is going to show up at the end of the game, and Hassan Reddick and your defense, they're going to be in positions to make plays at the end. But everything else in between, I mean, the league already knows about it. People are already saying that the Philadelphia Eagles are lucky. They've been lucky, this and this and that. So I don't think you learn anything new about Philly. I think what you do learn is about San Francisco. And kind of that idea that we were talking about last year of if Brock Purdy would have been in for the entirety of the NFC Championship game, do the 49ers go to the Super Bowl? I think this game is a good indicator of that.
Yeah,
but
I'm with you.
So I'm going Philly. You're going San Francisco. Now we have Kansas City versus Green Bay. I love what I'm seeing from Green Bay, but again, it's Mahomes. Even though his receivers aren't great, Rashid Rice showed up against the Raiders. That's a game that I got to watch, and he made a couple of plays, had a couple of drops as well. But I think Kansas City will win it, even though I love what I'm seeing for Jordan Love. Again, I'm going to keep saying it. Give him time. And I know we've said that, like, he's already had time behind Aaron Rodgers, but the team's not the same. You don't have the same receivers. Aaron Jones, I think, is washed at this point. He's not the same player. He's injured. He's hurt all the time.
Yeah.
It's just not the same. And so Jordan Love is playing well with what he's got. And yeah, he had a couple of runs of bad interceptions, but he's playing good football now, and I like what I'm seeing from
Yeah.
him. But I'm going to go with
Yeah.
Kansas City.
Yeah, me too. I think it'll be easy win for them.
And then Cincinnati versus Jacksonville. I'm going to go Jacksonville, but I could see them losing this game just because I don't believe in them. I think Trevor Lawrence is wildly inconsistent. But
yeah, I think he played well against Houston, and it's Cincinnati, and Cincinnati without Joe Burrow is
the Cincinnati of old.
Yeah. So, but I'm gonna take Jacksonville.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here on Double Take, an NFL podcast covering Week 12 and pick up for Week 13. A couple of discussions about MVP, about Buffalo, about Denver. We're going to come back next week. And Daniel, you said Steven is going to come on the show?
Yeah, hopefully I can get him and see if he can come in and be with us for next week.
All I know is that when I invite a guest and I say, hey, my guest is, I'm going to get my guest to come on, all my guests, even though it's only been Steven and Dad, like, my guest has shown up. None of your guests has shown up when I've been on the podcast. So if I'm calling Steven out right now, if you don't come on the show next week, all your friends, Daniel, are scared of me. They're scared of debate. I'm just calling them out right now. There's no reason why they shouldn't do the show. No reason why they shouldn't do the show. So hopefully we'll get Steven on next week as we review Philly and San Francisco, preview Philly versus Dallas, see who's legit, who's the big teams.
You give me a time to give to Steven, and I'll make it happen. I'll try to make it happen.
Well, let's make it happen. But Daniel, have fun tomorrow night at Dallas.
Have a blast.
Game. Take pictures. Tell us how it went. Was just really, really excited for you to be on that show and to see how things go. But for Daniel, this is David, Double Take. Have a great weekend watching football. And until next time, God bless.